What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. My name is Lamar Barrett, the host of Unmasked. Why should you listen to this show? You should listen to this show because being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now let's unmask them. Today's guest is a longtime friend, longtime assistant coach, and Brooklyn native. He made sure I need to say that, Marlon Gill. Marlon is from, let's talk about his background a little bit. Started off at Eastern Connecticut State. Actually, I was at Central Connecticut State in New Haven. At the time, he was like kind of just entering into college basketball. I know he was doing AAU as well. And then from there, he went on to St. Peter's University, where he spent 7 years. And then he's just finished wrapping up his 5th year at Rider University. Welcome to the show, Marlon.
I appreciate you having me, man. Looking forward to doing this. I heard about it for such a long time. I'm just glad you was able to have me on.
So, Marlon, today, I'll ask you several questions about your experience as a college basketball coach and hope to find out things about you that hasn't been told publicly before. So we're going to start with question one, and I'd like to ask all, my guests this is, and this you think back to your first time, and you can probably talk about St. Peter's more than even Eastern Connecticut is, this is what a lot of people don't understand. There's no handbook to being a college coach. Whatever you want to say, a lot of people get training on the job. I equate car salesman, college basketball coach a lot of times because you're just thrown into the fire and everyone tells you to figure it out. So tell me about your first day, first week, first month, after things are done with human resources, especially when no one gives you direction.
You're right. Nobody does give you directions. I think it's just an assumption. When you get into coaching, and if you have the background, everybody just assumes that you know what to do. And before I even go to my St. Peter's experience, I'll tell you my first Eastern Connecticut experience. The D3 rules back at that time, this is 2007, 2008. Everybody still started around that October 15th date. And, so at the D3 level, the only thing that's different is the time. So I remember everybody, like all the D1 schools started like around October 15th, which was usually that Friday, that second Friday in October. Well, we didn't start till that second Monday in October. So I remembered I was in New York for the weekend, looking forward to this new challenge of finally being a college coach. And from New York to Connecticut takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So we were starting up at midnight. So I said, you know what? I'm going to leave New York at 6 o'clock. That gives me enough time to get home, get changed, shower up, and get ready for my first practice. Man, listen, driving on I-84, there was a car crash in Danbury.
Woof.
I was on I-84 West for about 3 hours by itself.
Wow.
And just thinking to myself, Bill Geithner was the coach at the time. He's still the coach there now. Just thinking like, this guy's going to fire me before I even start because I'm going to be late to this midnight practice. But, lo and behold, for the powers that be, I made it there at 11 o'clock. Didn't even get a chance to go home. Luckily, I'd done some laundry at my mom's house. drove up to campus and got thrown into the fire of practice. Was able to sit down and, we did practice plans beforehand.
Right.
Coach told me what it was he wanted me to do. And to be honest, I kind of just went with the flow for that one. But, fast forward a year later, I get to St. Peter's and don't necessarily know that the rules are different. That, clearly you have the October 15th start date.
Right.
You can do your individual workouts. So it's kind of like the same experience. I'm excited just to get going, especially now you're at D1 level. And not knowing that those workout sessions are timed. As soon as you step on the court and pick up a ball, the clock starts going.
Yep.
So I'm 23, 24, and we had a freshman by the name of Jack Hill. So Jack had gotten to the gym early to get, some work in. Or, he might have just been like me, a freshman just excited. So he said, let me get there early. So I see that he's down there, and I just start throwing him the ball to work on some post moves. Not knowing that we cutting it this 45-minute time limit that we have for this session. So Coach Dunn, John Dunn was the head coach at St. Peter's at the time. He gives me this look like, yo, what are you doing? And, but it's something that nobody told me. So like you said, it's an experience that everybody just assumed that but I didn't know.
Yeah.
So, and he still busts my chops for that now, 13, 14 years later. It's like, hey, man, you still starting those workouts early? So now, compliance coming to me. So,
that's what you don't want to see, compliance.
right. So those were like my first two first day experiences at both of those jobs. I was almost late to one, and then I almost got us in trouble with the NCAA for the second one.
Wow, those are two interesting stories. I like those. Next question is, it kind of. I wanted to choose one or the other, but I was like, you know what, best, worst, and I think we talked about it one time off. We talked about it before, but like, what was your best and your worst recruiting story? And we don't have to name names or any of that stuff, but like, and like you can say what you feel. I mean, whatever you feel like. That's what you. What was your best or worst recruiting? Best and worst.
That's a good setup right there. I like it, but we're gonna get right into it then, man. I'm gonna give you the best one.
Go ahead.
The best one. So, like I said, and like you said, is just assumed that you know what it is you're doing, and nobody really teaches you. You kind of learn on the fly. So I get to St. Peter's, and I'm bringing in a whole bunch of names to the table in our recruiting meetings, and not knowing that these guys kind of already know who these players are,
right?
And they know what players fit in the league. So I'm throwing out different names and like, nah, I don't think he's good enough. Nah, he ain't. Nah, that's not it. So I'm sitting there like, yo, what? Like, I know what I'm doing, but it's clear I don't. So one day I get a phone call from a former player that I coached in AAU, and he was like, "Hey, Coach Mar, yo, I heard you at St. Peter's." I said, "Yeah, I'm there." "Yo, is D1?" I said, "Yeah." "What it's like?" "It's cool. I like it." "All right, yo, I'm coming." "You coming where?" I said, "Yo, I'm coming to St. Peter's." I didn't offer you anything yet. Yeah, I don't need that. Like, you my guy, so I'm going. So now I'm trying to figure out, like, how am I, and this is before social media really exploded. I think back then you probably had like Facebook. Uh,
Right.
so the kid puts on his Facebook, yo, committed to St. Peter's. Now, you know, my boss didn't, he wasn't really technologically savvy. Coach Dunn wasn't like that. So I just brought the kid's name up in a recruiting meeting, and he was in junior college. So we go down and we go see the kid. And he played well. And, you know, Coach Dunn was like, hey, that's your guy? Yeah, let's offer him. And in the back of my mind, as soon as he said, let's offer him, I just said, whew, thank you.
That's a great story. It worked out for you.
I was going to get out of this one. And luckily, you know, he stuck to his word, and we didn't sign him until the spring.
Right.
You know, because that early signing period had already passed, but he had already put that he was coming. So he signed in the spring, you know, and came to summer school in July. and for those that have been to St. Peter's, you know, I say it all the time, it's a great place, but it's an acquired taste. It's not for everybody. So he comes in July for summer school, and he's like, yo, Coach Mar, you my man? Man, you lucky I signed here without seeing it, because I don't know if I necessarily can. I was like, well, you pay for that now. He said, yeah, you told me. And you know, fast forward, man, he was with us for 2 years. You know, he gave me some headaches. He gave Coach Dunn some headaches. But, you know, when it was time to perform, man, in the conference championship game, he played well, won MVP of the conference tournament, and
Wow.
it led us to the NCAA tournament, man. So that's
That's a
probably
great story. That's a great one.
that's probably my best one, because it wasn't a lot of work that had to be done. It was just a phone call and a Facebook posting. My worst one, I would say probably 2011. This one's pretty funny, so I'm gonna try to not give off too much information, and you know, but you know, we're recruiting a kid, and had a chance to get him, in my opinion. And we're out at the Final Four. We just went to the NCAA tournament. It's funny how this story kind of coincides with the first one, because it's all in chronological order.
Right.
After we go to the NCAA tournament in 2011, we were recruiting a kid, and you know, just so happens that at the Final Four, you know, Coach Dunn takes us out to dinner as a staff. And for those of you that don't know, Coach Dunn, he's a serious guy on the court, but off the court, he's a prankster like no other.
Mm.
So he and I are joking at dinner, just, you know, ragging on one another. And somehow we start to bring up names of our significant others, just having a good time. And after dinner, I go to call my wife and, you know, try to prank her the same way Coach had pranked me at the dinner. But turns out that the recruit that we were recruiting had his mom had the same name as my wife.
Wow.
And I paid attention to who I was calling. And I called the wrong person by mistake and said the same joke that we had said at dinner. And when I looked at the phone, oh man, listen, you can only imagine, you know, when you like on a roller coaster, on a ride, and you get that empty pit feeling in your stomach.
Oh yeah.
But think about that, and think about you sweating profusely all at once. And this is what happened. So the lady says, "Excuse me, who are you talking to?" And I look, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I called the wrong person." So I hung up the phone, and I sat there. And for those of you that have been to the Final Four, you know that all the coaches stay at like the main hotel. So I'm just sitting down in the lobby with my hands over my head, like, "Yo, what did I just do?" And we ended up losing that kid to school in the conference, but
Woo.
you know, sometimes those things happen. I'm older and I'm wiser now, so I look back on it. I just laugh now. And Coach Dunn didn't know that story until now. If he sees this, so
I understand it. I understand it, man.
it was fun. You know, that was 10 years ago. I was a young buck then, man. So
could understand it. Serious question a little bit. So a lot of people don't understand this. When you get in this business, there's things you have to do, especially if you want to, achieve the level of success. But what did you have to give up to achieve your current level of success?
Oh man, a lot. For me, my story is a little different than a lot of people. I knew I wanted to get into coaching. At what level, I wasn't sure. The funny part to this is that I got into coaching through a guy, he probably didn't even know this, Mike Hill, that used to work at ESPN. He was an anchor, one of the sports anchors for ESPN. So after college, I ended up working at ESPN for like 18 months, and just wasn't what I wanted to do. But on Sunday nights, we used to have this thing called Midnight Run. So we would go hoop from midnight to about 4 in the morning, because that's just how the hours were at ESPN. So, we would play, and I would like to think I had some game. I was usually one of the first couple picks. So I would like to think that I had some game. And one day, Mike Hill just said, "Hey, man, you ever thought about getting into coaching?" So yeah, I thought about it, but not, didn't really pursue it. And he said, "Hey, man, you wasting your time here. You need to go be a coach because you know the game. You can teach it. You see things that people don't see." So I took his advice on that. And, one thing that ESPN has that not a lot of people have is every college basketball game that was ever played, or just every sporting event that's ever been played. So what I would do, I would request videos from the library and pick them up in the evening on my way home. Like my work hours were 9 to 5. I didn't have the hours that everybody else had at ESPN. I was a 9 to 5 guy. So around 7, 8 o'clock, my department, everybody would go home. So I would come back, take those videotapes that I picked up from the library and dumb them down to DVDs. And, on the weekends, I would watch them and study the game. And from there, I coached AAU for a while. And once I got to St. Peter's, I was just happy with the opportunity. But what a lot of people don't know is when you get into this business, a lot of time, we just want to strike it rich quick. And that doesn't happen. Right. At St. Peter's, my first 2 years, I was a volunteer. Didn't get paid a dime. But I was just happy with the opportunity to get out there and make a name for myself and just work. And it wasn't easy. I lived in New York, and I would go back and forth from New York to Jersey, and you just try to find ways to make it. I would get on the train and time the train from Brooklyn to Jersey and back. There'd be times where I would take the school van when I wasn't supposed to and drive it to Brooklyn and hope that when I woke up in the morning, it wasn't on 4 bricks. I collected unemployment. Shout out to Obama extending those weeks. I probably collected 99 weeks of unemployment. And, you just try to survive. And I had a daughter at the time, too. My daughter, 2 or 3 years old at the time. So it was a whole bunch of things that you try to do just to make it. And there are days that, I definitely second guessed myself, like, hey, did I make the right decision? But looking back at it, 15 years later, I wouldn't have done it any other way.
Wow, interesting. Um, this is a two-part question too. I always like to throw when it's best and worst, and because it's always the good and the bad. But and you know how you've been with coaches, and I've heard the story before a little bit about your first scout report. It doesn't have to relate to that if it doesn't. But what was your best and worst scouting report? Because a lot of times your best scout report may be a team you lost to by 30. Like you thought you did a great job, or your worst scout report, you thought you did a great job, and you know, you ended up, winning big. So, it's no in this business. It's crazy. But tell me, what was your best and worst scout report?
Well, I'm gonna say the worst was probably my first one, and the reason why I say that is because it took so damn long. So the way
How long did it take, Marlon? How long did it take?
oh, we're gonna get into that. I'm the whole story. We're gonna get into that. So, Coach Dunn gave out the scouts at the beginning of the year. So I had got the schedule in September. So from September, I'm watching it, and I still remember who it was. It was NJIT, and they had just transitioned to Division I from Division II. So I said, okay, let me start to get a feel for them. And the game was just moving so fast when I first got in. Like I said, I was just happy to be there. That everything was just moving so fast. So like I'm watching their games from the previous season. I'm like, yo, how am I gonna get all these plays down? Like I'm writing down what the set looked like, and it's just taking forever to figure out. And so we played them in November. And you want to talk about bad luck, man? Listen, I had it that day, or leading up into that game. So the game before, we had played a team in our league, and our star player, he played real well that day, and it was on a Sunday. I still remember the time frame. It was on a Sunday, and we won the game. And the next day I come in and I have this scout for NJIT, our next game, which was on a Wednesday. It might have been a Wednesday or Thursday. And I come in that Monday and Coach Dunn's in there, and you can see he has this sad look on his face. And I'm like, yo, is everything okay? Well, turns out, our star player had lost a family member right after the game. So he wasn't going to be with us for a while. And I'm like, okay, that's not a problem. I'm still thinking I'm prepared to be ready for the scout. Now, mind you, I started in September. It's November now. The scout took me 4 months, or 3 months, I should say. September, October, 3 months. And that's just because I didn't know. And it goes back to that assumption that we spoke about, right? That,
Yep.
that you know what it is that needs to be done. So, this scouting report took me 3 months to put together, with watching the film, knowing the sets, putting my scout report together. So we play this game, and NJIT is 0-51 at this time, right? Ooh. So we going to play this game. We don't have our star player, and then our third leading scorer, he starts to have like a stomach virus. So he's trying to play, but he doesn't know if he can play. And then we lose our big man to an injury during the game. So with about 2 minutes to go, we're down 3. And coach is looking at me like, hey, man, what are they going to run here? Well, I'm not going to lie to you, man. That same sweat that I had driving on 84 with that first practice at Eastern Connecticut State, it's the same sweat I had against NJIT. And where they're playing at now is not where they were playing at when I first got in. Where they played at a small gym, it was hot. So I'm just in there like, yo, man, we can't lose this game, because if we lose this game, we're going to be the breaking story on ESPN.
Yep.
And people are going to look to say, well, if they lost, who had the scout for that game? Because he sucked. So luckily, man, we won the game. And then from there, man, once I got that first one out the way, it was pretty simple. I would say my best one, and I'm gonna do this for your DMV guys. My best scout was probably my first year at Ryder. We played Maryland when they were number 2 in the country, and their arena is loud. And to be honest with you,
Oh yeah,
we should have won. Melo Trimble got one of those NBA calls towards the end of the free throws, but everything they ran that day, like you just know when your team's clicking and when you're clicking. Everything they ran, I'm yelling it out beforehand. Uh, and we were just on a roll. Everybody was bought in, and we ended up losing the game, and it was part of the Cancun challenge. So we go out to Cancun right after that game, and Mark Turgeon sees me in the hotel, and he might not remember this now, but it always stayed with me. He just asked me like, "Hey man, how'd you know everything that we were doing?" So leave it to me to have a little fun with it. Said, "Hey, I went to the John Dunn School of Scouting," and he's like, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, you go to John Dunn School of Scouting?" And I said, "Man, listen, if you can send your assistants to the John Dunn School of Scouting, they come back superb." But Lamar, he's actually thinking this is a school.
that's terms. Yeah, I can see that.
I'm just having a good time with it, but that always stuck with me, and from a personal standpoint, that was big to me because I know, and we all know the label we get as the minority guy on the staff sometimes is that
Yep.
we are the recruiter. So I just wanted to show everybody that hey, that I can do a scout. I'm more than just a guy that can recruit players. I can coach them too. I can put them through a play. I can give them a game plan to go win a game. And, like I said, we should have, they gave Melo Trimble a nice call, but that was probably my best one.
Two good ones. Best and worst. I like that. I like the, hey, you took your time on the 3-month one. And you know what? At the end of the day, you got the W. It don't matter. So,
I did.
You've been in it for a long time, and like one thing I admire about you, our friendship, but you always want to give back to the younger generation, and you talk about it a lot. Like, hey, we, don't give it back enough, and sometimes you think that, but even the young guy listening to this, just let me know, like, tell me what was your biggest challenge you have experienced since you become a college coach?
Biggest challenge. Well, before I answer that, it's still weird to me that at 37, some people consider me a vet now because I don't look at it that way. Which is crazy, but I guess it does go to a challenge.
It's getting younger though. The business is getting younger though.
It's getting younger, but at the same time, okay, now when I first got in at 23 years old, it was like, okay, you kind of just follow what the older guys are doing. And we're taught that you eventually work your way up that way. Well, now at 37, I'm still young in age, but now some people consider me old. And that's the tough part of understanding, like, okay, well, what side of the business do I belong in? Am I still with the young guys? Because when I first got in, the guys that were getting in weren't my age. I got in as a 23-year-old.
I got in as a 32-year-old. You know what I'm saying? So my grind was a little different. Like,
right.
So yeah, you're right. Like it's changed a little bit.
Yeah. So I kind of get caught up with that. Like I had a guy, and I won't say his name, but they had an opening on their staff, and he called a guy on my staff And the guy on my staff was like, "Hey, but what are you guys looking for?" And the guy said, a young guy that can come in and, you know, just make it happen." And there it is again, assuming that we'll know exactly what it is we need to do when we get there. So the guy on my staff asked this other gentleman, like, "Well, what's the age?" And he said, "Somebody young, 33, 34, 35." So, the guy on my staff says, "Well, Mars only 33. Oh, is he? I didn't know he was that young." But so it's almost like you get killed for being in it early and still being young. So
Yep.
that's the biggest challenge. Like, okay, where do you necessarily fit? You don't know. Um, and I'm still going through that now of the age thing. But I'd even say from a respect factor, uh, and it's just my personal opinion. I think with the work that I've put in and the track record that I have, there are a lot of guys that my resume stacks up better than theirs, but they're in a better situation than I'm in. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I don't complain about that anymore, because as I've gotten older, uh, we no longer, or I no longer chase the levels or the money. I chase the happiness. And I've been fortunate to be around good people. I spoke on Coach Dunn earlier, and now here at Ryder, I'm working for a great guy in Kevin Baggett, and I'm working with great people in Dino Presley, Jeff Arnold, Ben Kane, Roy Blumenthal, who we all get along. Um, the biggest thing I also think is that our significant others hang out with one another. So that helped as far as staff chemistry. And it really does feel like if we don't hear from one another on a daily basis, it's like, "Hey, man, is everything all right? Something wrong?" So it's kind of, hopefully I answered your question in the sense of the challenges, but how I've been able to adapt to them.
No, you definitely answered the question. I mean, that that's what people don't understand. Like, no, there's challenges. I mean, everywhere. Like, but that's actually a terrific answer. Um, the next question, like, um, do you ever find there are things about you that people misunderstand? Like, to me, I've been knowing you for a while. I'm sitting here like, and I'm questioning for you, not saying that you question, but I'm like, why isn't Marlon Gill at the highest level? Like, not only you just a great recruiter, and I don't even like look at that part of it, but it's like you got a great basketball mind. Like, you do so much on campus, you do so much from a basketball standpoint, on the court, off the court, especially with these kids, and it's like you're almost like the perfect person, and to be at that level. And sometimes like you might look at it, but you're in a great spot. Like you said it earlier, you with some great guys. But like for me on the outside, I'm like, yo, this dude is good. I've been in this business, I've been around this business coaching for 20 plus years. So you can kind of like identify a lot of times who's really good. Now I was laughing at some of these posts like, "Oh, this guy's a top 50 assistant in this small, in mid-major," or how me like, yo, like, no, like I mean, the guys you work with, guys who was in the conference with you, all of that stuff. But do you ever find there are things about you that people misunderstand, and like, what are they?
Well, I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna have some fun with this. Shout out to 51 and the other 50 guys that make those lists. Uh, well, for me, and that was all in good fun, man.
Yeah, and
Whatever list guys are on, that's great. Uh, I don't knock them. For me, it's one of those things where, like I said, when I first came in this business, we were taught that you just worked and you let your work speak for itself.
Correct. Yep.
And now you fast forward, and it changes. It changes over time, every couple years. But now, 14, 15 years later, it's all about the self-promotion. And I get it with the social media. Some guys use that platform way better than I do. And for me, that's just not how I move. And I've actually had this conversation with a friend of mine, a good recruiting friend of mine, of, hey man, like, what's the perception of Marlon Guild in the coaching world? And it's like, hey man, everybody likes you. I think you go out and you represent yourself and your university in the right degree, but guys just don't know what else it is that you do. And like I said, I'm not going to go out and self-promote and say the things that I do, because, like you said, the people that know me well enough, my staff, our administration, our players, they know what it is I do. So for me, that's worth it. And it took a while for me to get to that point, because, like I said, we're human. So you see other guys making moves, and it's like, okay, like I said, his resume doesn't stack up to mine, but it's all in whatever the higher power plans they have for you. So I
You know
don't.
what I always say, Marlon?
Mhm.
Perception versus reality.
Yes.
It's crazy. It's amazing how
Yes.
that is.
Yes. But I'm cool with that, man. I'm cool in my own skin, with what it is I do, and like I said, the guys like yourself or people that really know me, they know what it is I do, and to be honest with you, I'm fine with that. If the opportunity comes, great. If it doesn't, I don't really get caught up in it anymore.
Great answer. Um, like I said, we're all educators in this business. At the end of the day, I don't think people realize that enough. Because I always say this. When the parents drop their kids off at 18, 19, 20 years old, even 17, you always like you tell the parents, like, look, I'm taking care of this kid, for the next 4 or 5 years. But like, those relationships end up being longer than that. We know that. Like,
Right.
You recruit these kids, and these relationships go on forever with them and the family. But like I tell the parent, and I get calls to this day, like, even spots that I left from, like, you remember you said you was gonna make sure you take care of my kid. Like, parents remember that stuff, kids remember that stuff. So, what I say, because I always say, like, when the kids get dropped off, I tell the parents, like, you've done your job for, 18, 19, 20 years old. You've reared your kids. And I say it all the time. I hate the word raise. Raise is what they do to cattle. That's what you raise cattle. You don't raise kids. You rear kids. You don't raise them. So I was like, you've done your job for those years. Like, my job is to take your son from boy to man for the next 4 or 5 years. So what would you try to teach your players besides basketball?
You know what? You just try to teach them real life stuff, and I think, like, we're going through that right now, right? With
Yep.
everything that's going on in the world, and you just try to prepare them for what's going to happen and how you handle it. And kind of like coaching, there's no manual for that neither.
None.
So you just try to prepare them by giving them real life stories, whether that's from your own experience in life, and it's kind of like, a Jay-Z line, like, I told you sell drugs. No, Hove did that, so hopefully you wouldn't have to go through that. So you just try to teach these guys. Now, do they want to listen? No,
No.
probably not. But you just try to reach them the best way that you can. And like you said, for us, I think as coaches, we will never reap the benefit of the reward of changing a guy's life right away because the time frame is too small.
Correct. Yes.
We
Yes.
see them, and we probably only have them for a 4 to 5 year period. So
Correct.
that's from 18 to 22. But now, what if that young man doesn't hit that change until he's 30? So that's 8 years from when he left you.
But the thing about it was your impact on him.
Yes.
What, like you said, like he reflects back, like all the time you were tough on him and all of that. That's
Yeah.
what I like when the kids come back. Is like, Coach, you remember you told me to do this, but I really didn't want to listen.
Yes.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the stuff that's like that keeps you excited and
Yep.
going and stuff. Yeah.
Agreed. So I would say that's what I try to do. You know, it might not get through right away, but eventually it will. And like you said, they come back and they tell you stories that you forgot that you said because you've been saying it for so long that when they hit you with it, it's like, oh, damn, I did say that. Okay.
Yeah. 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 You're right. You're right. So always the best with the worst. I'm coming with it. Can't have one without the other. But what are your best and worst memories in coaching? I know you've been to the NCAA tournament and you've won the league, and I mean that could be part of the best, but like what are your best and worst memories in coaching?
My best memory is obviously going to the NCAA tournament. When that buzzer went off, man, in Bridgeport, Connecticut in 2011, I cried like no other. And it's somebody got some pictures out there of me crying. If you got them, don't use that against me.
You can put that as a meme, though.
It really could be. And what didn't help was the money green shirt that I had on for that game too. I still remember that. That was my best moment. The worst moment, it came the year after. And when all them guys you had that was getting you them buckets, they move on and you got a younger group and you don't have a younger group, but you got to teach them. And, you know, the worst memory was that following year, we played the team that we beat in the championship. And they were still loaded. I'm not going to say who they were.
Research it.
Lamar, I'm not going to lie to you. I think the conference set us up.
Wow.
We played them on their senior day. And all them guys we beat the year before was still there.
Woo!
It's a true story. You can look it up on Synergy. They went on about a 31-0 run.
Wow.
It was true. If it wasn't 31, it felt like 31. The funny part to that is I was still at St. Peter's, and they went on this run, and I happened to look at the clock, and it said about 12 minutes left on the clock. And Coach Dunn might have looked at the clock too, but I didn't know that he was looking. He didn't know that I was looking. And somehow we both had eye contact with each other, and we both said, shit, at the same time and looked at each other, and we just started laughing. That was all you could do. We looked at it and went, shit.
Wow.
And that was my best moment and my worst moment.
Gotcha. What was the and I like this because it's like you can find out information like that's not something you can just if you're not around or in the circle or like people have no idea about some of this stuff, but like, you know, what was the most stressful situation you faced? Like, I mean, this game has done a lot of great things for you. It caused you to get gray hair quick, but like, what was the most stressful situation you faced?
Most stressful, I would say it would probably be my first 2 years at St. Peter's, you know, because it was a volunteer spot. And like I said, I felt like I was getting $1 million because of the experience. You know, when you don't necessarily have that check coming in every week or every other week or every once a month, however it is, you know, like I said, you start to question yourself, like, did I make the right decision? You know, and luckily for me, I had a good support system, you know, that said, hey, this is what we're going to do. Uh, and for me, it was just a matter of, hey, as long as my daughter's taken care of, I could figure everything else out. And you know, like I said, I did. Now, I probably should be in jail for fraud. You know, but, you know, you just try to find a way and make it happen. So
Right.
that'd probably be my most stressful time, those first 2 years, just off the court. On the
Gotcha.
court and in the office, it was great. Worked with great guys there too. Like I said, John Dunn, John Morton, James Wallace.
Shout out John Morton, man.
And shout out to OG.
True OG. Yes, sir.
John Morton, look him up, man. One of I'll say this, and I'm going off on a 10. John Morton taught me the most important thing in this business, and that was how to be a professional. Like I said, at the time when I came in at 23 years old, I didn't know anything. And like we said, people just assume, but he would pull me to the side and young fella, this is how you do it. If you're going to a recruit's house, this is what you wear. If we're going to the airport, this is what you wear. You know, little things like that. He taught me, and those are the things I try to teach, you know, the younger guys now.
That's what it's about, man. Like, you know, passing along the information, man, paying it forward. So kind of going to ask a couple of questions, like, that hasn't been as serious, and like might bring a little laughter to yourself as you're about to tell it. It's not as long, but like, because we're kind of winding down a little bit, but like, what is the strangest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court?
Oh man, I had a kid, man.
And you don't have to mention names. But they'll probably figure it out.
Yeah, I'm not gonna mention no name because I still joke about it now. Somebody actually called me about this the other day. I had a kid get arrested for stealing an Easy Pass at another school's campus.
Wow.
The Easy Pass and didn't own a car. You know, and like once they found out he didn't have a car, like the law enforcement people just laughed at him and let him go. He didn't own a car, so that'd probably be the strangest.
Wow. That's a strange one right there.
Yeah.
Especially when he didn't own a car. This is kind of you know what? Like some people get stumped with it, but quick question, like, if you had a chance to work for anyone, and listen, shout out Kevin Baggs, great guy. So I'm not excluding him because Kevin Baggs is a great guy. John Dunn is a great guy. So not even counting those two, but if you had a chance to work for anyone in men's basketball, who would that be and why? And it could be, you know, you as a head coach, or for a particular AD, you being the head coach. Who would you say?
Well, I'll go with two. The head coach, that's easy. I'd love to go work for Ed Cooley. That's a no-brainer.
That's a great guy. Yeah.
And I've had a chance to coach against Ed Cooley a lot of times when he was at Fairfield, and then since I've been at Ryder, we played him 2 times when he's been at Providence. But I look at Ed Cooley just from a personality standpoint. He gets it. He gets how to coach his guys on the court, off the court. I've got some Ed Cooley stories that I can't tell on here. I look at Ed Cooley as the new age John Thompson. And what I say by that is he can go into a house and like we touched on, he can assure the parents that their child will be taken care of.
Yep.
You know, now, if my son's good and Ed is still coaching, if he ain't playing for me, because I'm already putting that out there. If my son's nice, he's coming to play for me. I would love for him to play for Ed Cooley. And then from a AD standpoint, I'm a big fan of Pat Lyons. He used to be the AD at Iona, was the AD at Seton Hall, and I think he's actually moved up in the ranks over at Seton Hall. But, you know, I like Pat Lyons just from the standpoint of, you know, he's always willing to help somebody. And in the time that we've known each other, it didn't matter whether I called him or I emailed him. He always got right back to me and gave me a piece of advice. Now, whether I took it and used it, you know, was up to me. But he was always willing to help me out, and still willing to this day to do that.
What, and you kind of, you look at movies, your TV show. I know, especially the wife might draw you in sometime, but like, what movie or TV show or TV show title best describes your week?
Describes my week. Good Times.
Good Times. Wow, I like that. That kind of like, that's shocking, but I like that.
And just so be clear, I wasn't born when Good Times was on, so I watched the reruns. But I say that because there's always something bad that's gonna happen, but somehow Florida and James figure out a way to make it better. So I'm gonna go Good Times.
I like that answer. What's your favorite word or phrase that you may use, like especially around your guys and players, or just in life general? Like, what's your favorite word or phrase?
Well, for my players, they probably know this one. After every text message they get from me, they get a thanks, coach, and a peace sign. Everything.
Because I admire you. Like, every morning you have something up on Twitter, man. It's like, you know, it's just as it's inspiring. So like, I don't think enough people need to follow you and see that. But like, you're gonna have something that's inspiring every morning. I mean, I had to even check you on, like, hey man, can I retweet that? Like, because I know, like, it's a lot of good stuff that you say. So like, I mean, I just want to let you know that there's a lot of good stuff that you say on that, and I think, you know, people need to check that out. But you give a lot of motivational stuff that I like.
Well, I think that just comes from where I came from. You know, just growing up in Brooklyn, you know, there were some times that were good, but there were some times that were bad. So, you know, I always say to myself, yo, it can always be worse. And I think if we have that mentality, but at the same time wanting to get better, things will be all right. So I always go back to that, like, hey, it could be a lot worse, but how do I make it better? How do I make us better? So that's what you get with the messages that I try to send
out. You've been around it a long time. It could be from anywhere, you know, parents, coaches. It could be anyone. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward, like that.
The same way, like I said, you know, John Morton showed me. That's what I try to do now. Just pay it forward to younger guys, older guys that are my age. Just pay it forward, and hopefully they do the same for somebody else. Because if that continues to happen, you know, not just college basketball, just basketball in general, just the world will be a better place. So just pay it forward.
And but I mean, where is your happy place? You know, like, that's a lot of times, you know, one of our good friends was Sheen. He hit me onto it. Is, you know, his happy place is he goes to the movie theaters alone, and I started doing it myself. Like, you could just leave the office some days, go to the movies, sit there for a couple of hours, and it's just you in the movie theater, and it's like one of the happiest moments of your life. Like, you just forget about everything else in the world. You know what I'm saying? But where is your happy place?
Well, clearly, you and Rod got way more money than I do to keep going.
I'm a $5 Tuesday guy, though, man. It used to be that way.
Uh, the happy place for me, uh, and I hate to say this, it's my house, empty,
Damn.
nobody there.
I
You
mean,
know,
that's what it is. You
I,
know.
I can read books, read information. I'm a big time reader. I try to read one book a month. Uh, and then, my DVR has a whole bunch of shows that I got to catch up on. And so that's my happy place, man, in the house.
That's, and this is the next to the last question, because I always want to end this question with the same question. Like how I begin is how kind of end. But like, let me ask you this question first, though: is if you had to choose three adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
Passionate, aggressive, spontaneous.
Three good ones. I would concur with that. And this is the last question before we get off. But knowing what you know now, what would you tell your young self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
It's so much, but I would say prepare to not be well known. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier of when we first came in, we were taught that the work kind of just speaks for itself. Whereas now you fast forward in 2020, it's just the opposite. It's not the work that's speaking for yourself. It's you speaking for yourself. Right. And a lot of times, like the guys that have been in it for a while, we don't necessarily know how to adjust to that. Or we do, but we have an issue with it because that's not how we were brought up in the business.
Right.
So it does annoy you, like I said, when you see certain guys get things that you question. And like I said, that's just because you're human. But, knowing what I know now, that's what I would tell myself. Like, don't get caught up in that. Just focus on what it is you can control and go from there, man. It's not easy, though. Trust me, it's not easy.
Well, Marlon, I want to thank you again for coming on the show, man. Like, you know what? One thing, I mean, I brought up Rye earlier, and it's like, man, we're like brothers. Like, and it's interesting. This is something, a year ago I got out of college basketball and pursued NBA scouting, and we still stay. You're
smarter than a lot of us on that.
We still stay in touch with each other, and I mean, all the time. Like, people have no idea, like, especially during this pandemic. I mean, we've been doing it anyway, but I mean, we're up late at night, sleep patterns off. We might be on the phone. We might be on FaceTime. We texting, and and it's good because our friendship is bigger than that. We're brothers, and it's like, I said, look, man, I'm doing this podcast, and Marlon has invited me to some of the Zooms, and this way it kind of struck me thinking about this. I've always been a storyteller. I like to tell stories. I like to listen to stories. And we just sat in a Zoom one day and probably spent a lot of time in there. And it was like, guys I didn't even know. I was just rambling on with a story. And so that popped in my mind, and I ran it by Rasheen and Marlon and a couple other friends, and they was like, go for it. And I was like, I want y'all to be my first guest on the show. And it wasn't even like what you asking, any of that stuff. And so I appreciate that because you guys was like, hey, man, I'm on. And so I appreciate that, being a guest on the show and being unmasked. People get to hear, not everybody knows, not everyone, but like they know your story, your journey. Everyone tells that, but they don't hear the other stuff that's behind it. And some of the stories that like, wow, it's really that way, or like, and it might inspire some young guy to like being into it. But, I just want to thank you for coming on, and you know, I'm sure we'll stay in touch. We're talking all the time, so that doesn't matter. But you know, thanks again, and to all the ones who listening, stay tuned. Marlon, you got anything to say before we go off?
No, man, appreciate you having me on. You know, hopefully this will be able to help the next guy that's trying to come up in the business. And you know what you're doing now. You know, like I said, you smarter than us, man. You figured it out. You know, my time with this is over. Let me go, and you know, you creating a new path, and I think that's important, especially during these times for everything that we're going through. We have so much idle time on our hands. If somebody's not coming out with something productive out of this time, then what were you doing the entire time? And so, you know, salute to you for just even thinking of this platform and going through with it. A lot of times we think of ideas, but we don't follow through. So, you know, salute to you on that.
Yep, thanks again. So, Unmasked fans, stay tuned for the next guest as we get ready to unmask them. All right, so this is Lamar Barrett saying goodbye.